Welcome. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. I can't see us.
That's okay. We're just going to go by faith that it's there.
Yeah, we're there. Yes,
there we are.
There we are.
Oh, look, daylight.
Yes, praise God.
Right there.
I cannot stand when it gets dark at like 3:39. It's a mess. Welcome to All the Things, our special midweek edition. I am Monique Dusan.
And I am Krista Bontrager, also known as Theology Mom.
Thank you for joining us. And also big
Something
thanks.
wrong with your mic. Is it pointing at you?
My mic is pointing at me.
There you go.
Okay.
Talk into it.
All right.
There you go.
I will eat it. No. And also big thanks to Bob, who reminds me to fix my mic and all the things. He is also known as Bob the Button Pusher. Thank you so much.
We couldn't do it without him, literally.
Surely could not. If you're watching, and I know
Live?
that you are, live, share the show.
Yes, and also join on our live chat at YouTube. That's where we are. That's the easiest place to interact with us. And we're still kind of getting situated here. Happy Wednesday. And share the show. We're going to have a practical conversation. It's tax day.
Yep.
And we thought we would have some discussion about money and the stimulus. Because our stimulus check came into our account today.
Yours did. I just did my taxes. So, hey, no time like the present, right, folks? Okay. So let's talk about our show a little bit.
Yeah. So it's going to be a quick show. We're just going to be online with you for a little while, but we do have a couple of guests.
Laura Hartley, she's been on before. She's amazing. She is an instructor for Financial Peace University, and she's going to talk with us a little bit about what should you do with this stimulus money? Because I know if the clubs were open, some of y'all be at the club, just dropping your hundreds like that. No, that's not the way to do it. You know, you had a little club beat. Look at you. What you know about the club beat? Okay. Yeah. So what do you do with this money? Do we save it? Do we spend it? To help restart the economy and all that? What would be the best thing to do with it? And then after Laura, we're going to have on
our friend Amanda Burke, who is a viewer, but a frequent commenter on the show and has a background in finance. And she's been doing a deep dive into the small business loans that churches are going to be receiving as part of the stimulus. And so we want to help pastors ask some important questions before they go to the bank and cash those checks.
Yes. Because should you be taking that money from the government?
Yes.
I don't know.
So,
but yeah.
We did have Laura on at a previous show last summer. We want to let people know about that.
Does God care about my money?
That's right. And
yes.
We did a whole show about what scripture has to say and biblical wisdom about money. So you can go catch more background on kind of the theology of money by going back to that previous conversation.
Yeah, it's super important that we as Christians are responsible with our money and that we are diligent and wise in how we're using our money. Yeah. I think she comes with a lot of good information. She's actually supported me through a lot of money questions.
Let's just keep it real.
Tutoring and money issues. And so,
yeah,
I am super thankful for her wisdom, and it's definitay working.
As another resource,
good stuff.
There's another resource I want to let people know. We did a whole show on capitalism last summer as well with our friend Dr. Mike Gurney.
Yes.
And we talked about another aspect of the theology of money. So if you want to do deeper dives, those would be a couple of resources for you. So let's get Laura on the show. Let's fire up the Zoom machine here and beam into Laura's living room. Welcome, Laura.
Hello. Actually, into my dining room, but
your dining room. Okay.
Hi.
You're getting fancy. You got a headset now.
I am. I figure I want to be heard and not. I was told by one of my students in FPU, since we're meeting on Zoom now, that I sounded like I was rapping, and I was like, that's not what I want to be doing.
You remind me of that Janet Jackson headset when she was like, oh.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all remember that video. But
No wardrobe malfunctions here.
No, this is pre malfunction.
Okay, so a lot of people are going through income adjustments right now. Should we call them that? And this whole quarantine situation is causing a lot of people to lose income temporarily. Some people have been furloughed. So let's maybe start with some big picture goals for those of us who are working our budgets Um,
I am working my budget. I'm just gonna go ahead and raise my hand. Hi.
is
Nadine.
Work it,
Laura's your
girl.
accountability partner with your
Yes.
budget. And so, like on our end, Bob is not having an income right now because nobody's having parties. And he has a small party business, laser tag, mobile laser tag party business. Nobody's having parties. This is really coming into our big time of the year. Like we're have the potential to lose thousands of dollars for our family income because people are not calling him right now because they can't have parties. And this is always his end of the year, big school carnival,
Yeah.
grad night events. And
There's
so
no graduations.
there's no
Yes.
graduations. So as people like us are thinking through our budget goals, what are some things that we should be keeping in mind during this season?
I think the biggest thing is to control what you're able to control, and not stress about those things that are out of your control. And if you are losing part of your income, like what you guys are, go back down to covering the basics. As Dave Ramsey always says, take care of those four walls first, which pay your mortgage, pay your rent, take care of utilities, make sure you have food on the table, and transportation.
Okay, so those are
Yeah,
our four walls. We need a place to live, we need electricity,
Transportation.
transportation, and food. So those are our budget priorities.
Yep, those are your budget priorities. Continue making minimum payments on things. If you're working the debt snowball, if you're paying off debt, go ahead and slow that snowball down. Don't pay extra on things, but just continue to make the minimum payments. And take lots of deep breaths. Just you really need to really start prioritizing what you've been spending money on, what's actual needs versus what's wants. I know for us, like we're not spending as much money on gas because we're not driving anywhere. So that's great. That and the price of gas right now is astronomically cheap. I just filled up for $10 today.
Because demand is low. That's how
Yeah.
pricing works, is as demand goes down, or then prices also go down. But right now a lot of our money is, instead of buying gas and eating out, our grocery bills
Yes.
are off the hook because we're eating at home all the time.
Who knew that people needed to eat dinner every day?
Monique's like,
Right.
enough
I've
of
made
this.
3,000 meals in the last
And they
month.
want breakfast and lunch and snacks.
Yeah. Yes. I cannot even. But I do
Yeah.
think that you bring up a good point with, tend to the four walls and then take a deep breath. Because biblically, like, we're not going to add a day or like an inch to our stature by stressing about it all. Oh, thanks for telling me that I was looking at the wrong camera. Sometimes people,
It's okay.
the middle of the week. So I think that's really important to remember, like, do what you can and what's in your control, and then breathe and remember that God still is in control and none of this took him by surprise.
Exactly. I'm seeing so much of things that have happened just in our own community and people that we're around, how many things that the Lord has put into place, that's put on their hearts to put into action, that were amplified and so much needed during this time of quarantine. Like our pastor in January was saying, like, hey, I really want to see us be able to stream our services online sometime in 2020. Like, this is my goal sometime in 2020. And I'm like, oh, don't make visions like that, because all of a sudden overnight we had to have it done, right? Because we couldn't meet in church anymore. But definitely do not discount the fact that the Lord is still in control, and he's got it all covered.
I think that's an important point. So we want to have sober judgment. That's a biblical concept. We want to use wisdom and control the things that we can control, but we also have to trust the Lord to provide for all of our needs. So we're balancing both of those biblical truths And also another biblical truth is that of sharing and sharing with our neighbor, looking out for our neighbor, trying to help people, with their shopping, with their needs. And we're going to actually be talking about that on Saturday's show. We're going to be devoting a whole show to helping the poor, especially in this season. How do we help resource people who are falling short in their income? So we're going to continue with the practical biblical wisdom here on all the things, because we want to provide equipping and training for you to live biblically, but in the real world. And we think that theology comes to bear on all of those things. So
Yeah,
let's
that's
get
great.
into the stimulus situation. So
Okay.
people are starting to get their checks. I'm waiting for mine. But what should we be doing with this? I've heard things run like across the gamut from make sure you save some because, at next tax season, they're going to ask for a percentage of it back because you're going to be taxed on it. Then I've heard that isn't true. Christians shouldn't take from the government, or like the money's coming. And, what should we do with this money?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a question that I had myself a couple weeks ago, and started looking into it more. And I know I've heard people say like, oh, you need to spend it to stimulate the economy. And really the reality is look at where you're at. If you're struggling to meet those four walls and to take care of your family, then definitely use that stimulus money to take care of paying the bills and
groceries,
getting
people.
groceries, whatever, wherever that's needed. And then whatever's left over, once you cover your basics, throw that into an emergency fund, so that way you have something there if something else comes up. If you're doing okay and there's no threat of your job decreasing or your income decreasing, then go ahead. If you're working the baby steps, and that's the world that I live in, is working the Dave Ramsey baby steps. And so if you're doing that, then go ahead and use that to boost whatever baby step you're on. If you're paying off debt, if you don't have any threat of losing income, then you can go ahead and throw that at paying off your debt or boosting your emergency fund if that's where you're at, or investing it. As Dave Ramsey always says, stocks are on sale right now because stock market's really bad.
What about the tax question? Have you done any research on whether or not we're going to be taxed on this stimulus money?
Everything I have found, what I've researched, is it is absolutely tax-free, and you're not going to be taxed on it. You're not going to be taxed on it. You're not going to be asked for it back. But it is our government going into deeper debt, so we will end up paying for it.
We're going to pay for it somehow. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah.
So your advice then is, with this money that's coming down, if you aren't debt free, you should either be applying this toward your four walls or applying it toward your debt.
Yes, but I would even say if like your income is fluctuating and you might not have the same income, go ahead and put it in your emergency fund. And then when all this rolls over, because we will get through this, right? We know that there is an end. We're not going to be like this forever. Then you can take that money and throw it at, like, make a big dent on your debt. So if like that's the thing. It all depends on your current circumstances.
So when we think about even who's getting the money, there was a graphic Monique pulled just moments before we went live, because people need to know that not everybody is going to get money. We were surprised this morning when we got our amount in. Bob woke up, looked in our bank account, saw the stimulus money was there. We thought we were getting money for both of us plus both of our kids. Our ages 17 and 20, but we did not get money for the 20-year-old. And so we have a little list here that we ripped off from somebody else. Let's be clear. About who's not getting stimulus checks. College students, that's our 20-year-old. Disabled people whose parents support them, seniors living with their kids, immigrants without social security numbers, babies born in 2020, higher earners who lost their jobs, parents who split custody, and people who owe back child support. So people need to know if you have a college student, that's a fairly significant gap that you're not going to get money for them.
Yeah, that's the big bummer that we've found too is our 20-year-old also, we don't get stimulus money for her, and she doesn't get a stimulus check,
Yeah,
even though
same with
she's
ours.
been earning income and filing taxes. So it's once you turn 17, you're just in this like, I don't know.
It's a no man's land
It's a
because
no man's land, yeah.
our girl just turned 17 right after the deadline. So we did get money for her, but that I don't think most people know that there's that no man's land from 17 and above. Even if you're claiming them as a dependent, do we claim her as a dependent? Yeah, we do claim her as a dependent because we're financing her in college, but she is working, she is filing her own taxes, but she didn't get a check. So
Yeah, it's that between 17 and complete independence, you're just in this lost land of
yeah,
credits.
yeah. Yeah, there's other conversations of other stimulus packages coming. We won't go into those now, but there are some other things on the table. But just we need to keep in mind, this is just the government printing money, people. Like
That's my question. I was like, where are you getting this money from? Because when I'm broke, I can't just print it out and cut it up and be like, here's
Here
a
you go.
50.
Well,
Here you
it's
go.
good that you don't, because some people do. They think that they can just write a check even if they don't have money in the bank. So
yeah, it's
do
all a
that.
little
Don't
puzzling
be like the
how
government.
this actually works. But there's that. So what are some thoughts that you have maybe on what we should not be doing right now? Like maybe not making any big moves. What should we not be doing in this season?
that is a very good question. I'm not going to share, as I was just conversing with Monique before going on the show, of do not move your investments. Like if you have 401k, even though the government is allowing you to withdraw from that if you need to without penalty,
Yes, without
don't do
penalty.
it. Now is the worst time. Like to unplug your investments is bad anyways, and while the market is down is the worst time to pull out of it, because the market will recover. The market is a roller coaster all the time, and the only people, like I said, the only people who get hurt are those who jump off the roller coaster. So write it out, just like we watched our oldest daughter's college savings go down to basically nothing in 2009, and it was like, well, guess she's not going to college. But it recovered.
It recovered,
even
yeah,
though it
same
wasn't
for
very
us.
much money to begin with, but
Yeah.
It recovered. So know that it will recover.
So
the
we shouldn't
worst
do
thing you
any
can ever
like
do is take
debt
out of your 401k.
consolidation plans. We shouldn't do any big moves. We should.
And she brings that up because I was asking her the question. I was looking at some of my own personal stuff and was like, hey, it doesn't take, like, they're not going to penalize me if I move this or if I take this. She was like, stop it now. And I was like, but why? But when I looked at it, maybe when all of this first started, like March, I had lost some money. But now, I mean, in 14 days, I've recouped some. And so I was like, oh, that's not too bad, but can I take it out? She said no.
No. Don't make any big moves.
Don't make any big moves. I think it's just a good thing when you're in any sort of budget crisis is try not to make any major decisions. Now is not the time to make a major purchase, to go out and buy a car, to
So we shouldn't use our stimulus money to have a big party.
Can I get my eyebrows done?
well, obviously nobody's there to do your eyebrows, so
There's that.
they can't work. So
I think
yeah.
you bring up a good point of, don't make big decisions. A lot of times big decisions are based in fear. And so we don't want to make big decisions that are fear-based. We don't want to be living and making decisions from a place of like uncertainty, or I need to do this because what if, and all that. Like at some point we have to be concrete in our faith and say, no, I'm going to trust.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I hear you saying is, no big decisions, no fear-based decisions. Stay with what you're supposed to be doing, attending to your four walls, making sure that there's food for your kids, putting things in savings, acting responsibly and wisely, and not going out and buying a new car because you feel like, oh, a car will never be this price again. Or maybe I need to, stock up on 75,000 rolls of toilet paper because now I have $1,200. What are we going to do in accordance with wisdom and how the Bible tells us to act wisely? Now, here's a question. Do I have to tithe on this money?
Well,
I mean,
have to. That comes down to an attitude and perspective, right? I I would say, and it was something like, I mean, because I am that person that asks the same questions of myself all the time. And I did hear Dave Ramsey say, like, anything that's income, anything that comes into my bank account is income, and he always tithes off of that. And so I was like, that's a good point. Even if it's not necessarily tithing it to your church at this point, since it's extra money, giving to somebody who could use a little more to their stimulus to get out of a deep hole. And even that's what I was going to say, even if you're in a spot that you're living easy and this money isn't something that you need to take care of things in your family, look into how you can bless somebody else. Maybe even, put it into a program at the church, or do something on your own. And we always know when we give generously, it multiplies unendingly.
Well, that's
That
the
is
thing,
true.
is part of biblical wisdom with money. The Bible has so much to say about money. Like, seriously, if you haven't ever done a deep dive into scripture when it comes to money, like, that's a worthy topic to look into. But one of those principles is giving generously, not giving under compulsion, sharing with others. These are manifestations of our holiness. It's how we show that we belong to God. It's an evidence for God. It's an evidence that he lives in us. And so, be in that conversation about what you might share with others, because we want to be wise about it. We don't want to just be free spending. We want to live as godly people. And a big part of that is how we manage our money.
Yep.
So once again, I want to encourage people to catch our full interview with Laura from last summer. Does God care about my money? That was a fun time. And looking
money.
looking at biblical wisdom on money.
Sometimes I just think that I'm the only one who knows these songs, but never mind.
You're just the only
Yes.
one who's brave enough to sing them.
That was a good show, though.
Okay.
It really was.
The Apprentice?
That isn't from The Apprentice?
That's the opening for the Donald Trump's
is the
old
opening
reality
song for
show,
The
The Apprentice.
Oh, golly. That's from the show. It's from a movie.
We got to roll those.
What is the name
let's
of that
get those
movie?
reruns going.
No, what is the name of that movie? Money.
Yeah, that's the old Donald Trump reality show.
No. I will let you guys know. No, it's the movie.
Letting me know.
No.
Oh, somebody says Italian Job.
No, not that one either. It's before that.
Oh, okay.
It's
Now she's
New
gonna
York
be
City.
Googling.
What was the name of that movie?
Okay, we're going to say goodbye to Laura while Monique's
Laura,
Googling.
thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Okay. That's good. All right. So that was our first guest, but don't go anywhere because the live stream is only half over. We're going to have on our next guest in just a minute. Bob's working some magic to get our second guest up. Ooh, look, an infinite regress of us. That's kind of scary. We're going to be joined here in just a minute by our second guest while Monique is still Googling the song.
original song was that by ABBA.
No.
Money,
I
money,
don't-
money.
No, it's not.
Should I
Mama.
play it?
No.
Yes.
No.
We'll get a copyright strike. Don't do that.
It's like a movie from the 90s, and oh goodness. I just
Bob's
need
working on
one
the,
person to be in
The
with
Zoom
me.
machine. This is seamless.
One person.
We'll never again have two guests on the show.
One person who knows that song. It was not Boys in the Hood, because that was a long time. That's way before my time.
Oh, there she is. All right.
Hi, Amanda.
Here we go with guest number 2. We're going to fire up the Zoom machine. Bob's getting y'all situated. So we're going to switch gears here and let's see. Are we good? Bob's still getting you up.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about the SBA loans coming in for churches that is another component of the stimulus plan coming down the pike. So our friend Amanda Burke, who is a frequent commenter on the show, viewer, she likes to send me low-key ideas for videos. So she likes to send me articles and things to look at. So I'm glad to have her on the show as a guest, and she can speak into some of her area of expertise. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you here. So it looks like you're in your homeschool room or something there.
Yes, this is my dining room, converted homeschool room for the
All
kids.
right.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're in our former homeschool room that we converted into a studio. That's really supposed to be a living room.
Yes. This is supposed to be a dining room, but
Yeah.
it's multifunctional at this
That's
point.
right. You got to do
Before
what you
this,
got to
it was a
do.
museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in finance.
Yes, so I started my journey in finance about 15 years ago. I graduated from Campbell University's Trust and Wealth Management program out in Bowie's Creek in North Carolina. I am a licensed financial counselor through the Association of Financial Planning and Education, and I am a financial planner candidate currently, planning to take the exam in November of this year.
So she's
Wow.
got all the
I
credentials.
am,
Yeah.
yeah, not me. But I am also the co-founder of Camp Change Ministries, which is a stewardship camp designed to teach children about financial literacy as well.
That's
Wow.
so cool. So
That's awesome.
she does like summer programs and things to help teach kids about financial literacy. And Monique and I have had a lot of conversations about social justice issues, and
That is a huge social justice issue.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to you later on because I can see
Yes.
some possibilities for that.
because we
Yes,
think that that financial literacy is something that could be such a help to so many people that there's a gap there for a lot of people. And I've said we need more churches to teach financial literacy to people, especially in low income areas, and teach them how to succeed. So
Mhm.
very cool.
Absolutely. There is definitely a need for it.
Yeah. So tell us about what's coming for churches in the stimulus package. I know that you've been diligently researching this for the last week or so. So just give us kind of an overview of what's being offered for churches.
Yes. So for many of the churches, the biggest program right now is the Payroll Protection Program, otherwise known as the PPP program. And in that program, it's designed to help employers and businesses with fewer than 500 employees to keep their employees covered through the pandemic. And if they keep them on the payroll and cover qualified expenses from February 15th to June 30th, then they have an opportunity to have these loans forgiven on the back end. And some of the things that they would have to use the money for that would qualify for the forgiveness part would be for mortgage interest payments, utilities, any sort of rent payment, and of course, payroll cost.
So when we think about this money that's coming in, it sounds like it's sort of a provisional loan with the possibility of forgiveness. Is that kind of it if they use it a certain way?
Yes. The stipulations are that you use the money for those purposes intended, and anything outside of that is subjected to have to be paid back.
Okay, so if you don't use it according to how they tell you that you have to use it, then you have to pay it back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yes.
and that you would pay it back with interest?
You do. There is a very low interest rate of 1%.
Okay.
Mhm.
So,
So-
go ahead.
You have more experience with accepting government money. So why don't you ask the questions? Your background in social work.
So I have a lot of concerns based on, a lot of the experience that I have with grants coming into nonprofit organizations. I haven't been, on a church leadership board or council having to consider these things. But I know that in my experience, a lot of the grants do come with some major red lines and red tape of like, you can't cross this, you can't do that. Proselytizing would be one of those things. Now, I know that coming into a church, that wouldn't be on the table, but what are some of the concerns that you have in reviewing the money and the grants that are coming down?
Absolutely. So some of the concerns that I had regarding this and researching, and obviously, there is, I'm not a lawmaker or an attorney or an SBA rep, but I'm speaking solely from my own opinion and just presenting the findings that I found through the research. But through this act, it really, the caveat or the thing that's being said the most is that the devil is in the details on this. Again, the program was rolled out very quickly. This is the first time that churches have ever qualified for government funds. There have been some things through FEMA in the past that churches have applied for, and some have been rejected for those things, and they've had to go through litigation to get help from the government. But in this particular case, this is the first time that it's ever been rolled out this way. So there have been challenges to the application process, and for a lot of the churches to get clarification on what they're agreeing to ultimately in this application. And one of the things that they are agreeing to is they're agreeing to take the funds and adhere to civil rights laws, which could be a violation of church autonomy.
So when you're talking about civil rights laws, when I think about civil rights and the things that we sign off on in social service, it would be non-discriminatory acts. So right. How does that break down when things like discrimination can be up in the air? It could be something like, oh, well, now if you are participating in civil rights, you will hire someone who may be homosexual. And that might go specifically against your doctrine. If you are a, historic Christian church, what is that? Is that the gray area that you're talking about?
Yes, that is part of the gray area. Yes, ma'am.
So for you, when you're reading the wording, a question that's coming up for you is, if churches receive these loans, are they getting some kind of religious exemption so that they don't have to abide by some of the civil rights laws? Is that kind of the question that's in your mind?
Yes. And from the statements that the SBA has put out, they have said, we will hold churches to maintain their autonomy, that we are going to do our best to make sure that this, remains as a separation of church and state, basically on this portion. And that's what they're saying in their documents.
So your question is, will this have to be litigated? That's kind of what I'm reading behind your words, is that, okay, they're saying that churches are going to get some kind of religious exemption so that they don't have to abide by some of the civil rights laws, but there might be potential there for litigation when the Small Business Association, or these SBA loans, as they're called, this is a government agency. And so you have questions of, mixing, as to whether or not the government will really follow through on those promises, or whether this could end up ensnaring some churches.
That's absolutely right. Again, the SBA offers a prepared response that says that they don't foresee this happening, but I personally think that this could be a real possibility. And sort of my opinion has been brought to this point from listening to a lot of the lawmakers on some of the speeches that they've given on the topic, talking about this document being a contract, essentially. And, people have had concerns about if the makeup of the government changes, could new lawmakers that are involved go back and make churches pay this money back.
That was going to be my question. You know, like when Obamacare first went down and then Trump came into office and those things changed, you know, it's like, well, what happens if we elect a president who isn't President Trump and there's a change of heart, you know? So it's like,
Right.
you know, they come back at you and like, you know, I'll let you hold that money.
Yeah.
Can I get half of that back? You know, we've changed some of the stipulations now and there's nothing in place, or I'm not going to say there's nothing in place. I don't know if there's anything in place that would prevent, you know, good old Uncle Sam from coming back and saying, hey, can I get 50% of that back? You know, I changed my mind on some of these things.
Exactly. And that's where I'm standing with it at this moment. From the research that I've done, I've called the SBA. I've talked to various people, and
You've reached
there's
out to
just
several attorneys, even asking them for their opinion.
their opinions on it, and it's very, with it being such a new thing, I really think that the lawmakers that helped to put this in intended it to be good for the church, but at the same time, with so little fine tuning of the details of the application. And from what I'm gathering, it's an 800-page document that this is
Wow.
included in. So there's so much wording and language and red tape there that people are continuing to ask questions like, what will this mean for our church? And some of the questions that I think that the church probably should be thinking about is to pray about whether or not these funds from the government are really necessary for your church to remain functional. Right now we are also seeing that many churches are being penalized for holding drive-in services, and some of the governors are mocking Christians. We're just seeing a growing hostile environment for Christians during this time. So, again, back to the point of the election year, this is an election year. What if our makeup of government changes? What could happen then? So I would just urge caution to really think about this before, we go into borrowing. And even for many church leaders, there are policies that the church has against borrowing money. So are church leaders prepared to take on the responsibility of going into debt to the government if these loans are not forgiven? Even if the interest rates
I think
only
that's a really
1%.
important question, Amanda, is as church leaders, I think you're asking the right questions because, if we want to have our freedoms be guarded and we're concerned about being ticketed at drive-through services and having our license plates written down on Easter Sunday, do we really want to be going then and turning around and accepting government money? Like, we kind of can't have it both ways.
Yes.
And
Right.
so our elders in churches or whatever church leadership structure people have, they need to be asking these questions of what are we going to stand for? What principle are we going to stand for? And if we don't want the government to interfere in our affairs, do we want to have
You
the
can't
reverse?
have it both
Yeah.
ways. It's like you can't have separation of church and state and then be in the government's pocket. You can't be in the state's pocket
Yeah.
saying, hey, can I get that 50 cents? Because at some point there's an intermingling there. I like what Laura said in the comments. She said if everyone ties on the stimulus checks, maybe the church wouldn't need to get government assistance. I kind of agree.
That's very good.
Go ahead. Were you going to say
Oh,
something?
I was going to say that's very good. That was actually one of the visions I kind of had thoughts about for the church. Instead of depending on the government for the stimulus funds, what would it look like if we had, stewardship campaigns for tithing, reminding people, hey, the church is still here. The church still needs support. Let's focus on tithing. And we know many people are hurting during this time, but there are some that are still working and still receiving an income that can help out. And how might it look if some of our larger churches, some churches like within the associations, were to help out churches that we knew were struggling financially? Let's rely on one another as opposed to the government during this time.
That's what I was going to say. How many uber mega churches are there, just in California, but across the country that could adopt another church and say, hey, we're going to look out for you. We are the body of Christ. We're going to be unified in that. But instead, it's like we're running to the government to help relieve those needs that really should be relieved throughout our body.
Yeah, and I think that's a biblical principle. I mean, we see Paul taking collections from one church in one city to then take it to help another church in another city. That's a biblical idea. Again, coming back to the idea of sharing. Rather, if we're going to complain about government overreach, we have to be careful about then demanding money from the government. And so we have to be circumspect about these things and make sure that we're handling things in a biblical way. So, all right, any final thoughts, Amanda, before we go?
I just would just encourage church leaders and churches to pray about this. I just wanted to sort of present, these findings to everyone and have you really think about this. I know that they are right now anticipating that this reserve that was set aside for the payroll protection program to run out of money tomorrow, and they're trying to get more money into this. And long term, borrowing this money, unlike the stimulus money that many have received, the personal stimulus money, these loans, the payroll protection loans, they are an option. You do have an option to take this money or to not take this money, unlike the other one where it's just being sent to your account. So I would just call for good decision making. And if a church decides to take the money, I would encourage them to set up a different checking account to put those funds in so that they can hold full accountability for those funds and to adhere to good record keeping policies so that they can show where that money has gone to. So if the issue comes down to forgiveness of the grant, that they can, prove that those funds were used for purposes intended and not have any issues with the government on those fronts with that side of it.
Very good.
And
go ahead. Do you have one more thing?
Yeah, one more thing. Sorry. And in addition to that, for other things that I would encourage you to do, reach out to your lawmakers in your states. In North Carolina, I feel very confident that our lawmakers are going to look out for the best interests of our churches. But in other states, it might be a completely different situation and a completely different conversation happening in about 10 weeks from now when we're looking at those forgiveness grants. And you also have to remember that for the forgiveness grant, you're going to have to go back and reapply. So just by applying for the payroll protection program in itself is not going to automatically enroll you into the forgiveness portion. You're going to have to reapply for that. So just keep that in mind and reach out to your lawmakers. Put this on their radar so that they can be there to champion and support the churches in this, the ones that are deciding to take the funds.
Very good. Well, thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
So
I want
much.
to let people know how they can get connected to Camp Change. If people want to know more about your program to help kids with financial literacy, where can they get connected to you?
Yes, you can reach out to me at campchangeministries.com.
Very good. campchangeministries.com.
Yes.
And that'll be, it's a wonderful resource to just help kids begin to have conversations about their money, because God has a lot to say about money. And
Yes.
he wants us to be careful and wise and sober-minded about it. Thank you, Amanda. We really appreciate you coming on. All your research you've done. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so just a few minutes, we're going to sign off here, but give us a little tease for our show on Saturday and tell us about our guest.
On Saturday, we are going to speak with Brian Crane. He is the executive director of the Orange County Rescue Mission, and it is a service that is really close to my heart. I have worked in social service for a very long time, and
2 decades, people.
but I'm only 28.
That's right.
No. And I've a good portion of that time has been spent working with homeless youth, individuals, families, working with them on tracks back into housing and sustainability and things like that. And so he, as the executive director of the Orange County Rescue Mission, it'll be good to have a conversation on how can, we help the poor? How can we help the homeless during this time? What is he seeing among, his shelters? They have a ton of beds, and so a ton of different sites.
Yeah.
And then I'll also give some input as to what I'm seeing at the organization I work with. And we've literally probably doubled, if not nearly tripled, the amount of clients that we serve. And so there's a lot happening financially within our country, and a lot of people who would have never thought that they needed to go to a food pantry or, to receive some kind of government assistance to get on cash aid or receive electronic benefits like SNAP or food stamps, they're having to apply for that now, along with things like unemployment insurance and things like that. So what is the impact, and how are organizations staying afloat? When I look at our organization that I'm affiliated with, we need a lot of assistance. It takes not only a lot of food and financial resources, but it takes a lot of volunteers and hands-on. Can you volunteer your time? We were running on maybe 200 volunteers before this happened, so now how many more volunteers does it take? And so just kind of looking at that, what are some practical things that we can do to share of our time and our physical resource, if we can't share of our financial resource in this time?
And Brian is the husband of our friend Natasha Crane.
Yes.
And I get to volunteer at the Orange County Rescue Mission once a month, teaching, leading a discussion group on theology and apologetics. So we've gotten to know Brian, and I asked him to come on the show, and he was happy to do so. So having a really devout, thoughtful Christian who's working in the realm of helping to resource people, the homeless and the addicted, and how can we help these people not just as a social gospel type of a thing, but in a genuine Christian kind of a way. How does the Bible inform what we do? We've done some past conversations about helping the poor, but this will be like some really practical things that we can talk about. So I'm looking forward to Saturday's show. So be sure to share the show. We hope you found this information helpful from our guests and encouraging, and send us some feedback. Give us a like, hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment. Let us know how the program is blessing you and helping you in your Christian walk.
Yes, don't spend all your stimulus check at the club, folks. Or you can send it to us. Better than the club. The club isn't open anyway. So there's that. All right. Are we signing off?
We're signing off.
All right. It's been good.
Yeah. Real quick live stream. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember to stay 6 feet apart and social distance. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
There's nothing left.